All right, joining me now on the podcast that bears his name, as it always will. I don't care what he says. He is the founder of Knicks Film School. He is, let's see, I'm gonna try to think of how many different things. He's the founder of Knicks Film School. He's the founder of the Knicks Film School newsletter. He is the reason I have a career in basketball. I don't know, reporting, blogging, whatever you want to say. He runs Daily Knicks. He contributes regularly to the Strickland. He's the co-host right now of Pod Strickland.
Yes, one of the co-hosts. Yeah.
Did I forget anything? I think that's it.
No, that's it for now. Although I guess we're floating ideas today of adding another thing to that. Of adding another thing, but we'll see. We were talking about maybe doing something with the Mets now that things are looking exciting there. But yeah.
Well, Jeffrey Bellone, welcome. I've only been. Let's see. We've been. I feel like we've been texting more than normal over the last few weeks. You're definitely. I can tell when you're engaged. It's like a player. I'm trying to think of like a good example of like a player that like you knew, like J.R. Smith. Like you knew within the first couple minutes of the game when JR is like, okay, he's locked in. This is not a Sunday afternoon matinee. Yep. This is a a prime time. He's putting on the show on like a Saturday night so we could have a good evening afterwards. That's been you like the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, I think it's why I sort of go in and out of the clouds here, because I'm either all in and I try to, be on top of everything, or I'm just like, it's not worth it if I'm not doing that. But yeah, it's been fun getting back in the mix, especially right now where we got plenty going on.
There is a lot going on, which I guess, yeah, I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, me and JB didn't really talk about what we're going to talk about. Before we get into any of the news, should we, do you want to just like, let's update folks on what's going on with us, with us. We're moving in together. No, so you brought back, I right? That's the best way to put it. You brought back the Knicks Film School. You brought back what the Knicks Film School Twitter account became after a little while. I feel like I'm not phrasing it well.
Yeah, no. I think what it is we had Knicks Film School, the original Twitter account. And it was funny, I was on Knicks Fan TV last night and CP was saying, when that came out, like it was just sort of this mysterious thing, like no one knew who was behind it, what it was. And then, they all realized it's just nerdy old me. But that sort of started it all with the whole, I guess if you want to call it brand, but we've always treated it more as a community. And then when that account got suspended, I feel like that was around the time I was ready to sort of take a break from it.
It was a sign.
Yes. And then it evolved into obviously the news, we had a website and then also the newsletter, but also it just, to me at least, Knicks Film School always represented like a community of content producers. Well, the Twitter account has been missing. And I think that's always been the piece that on social that sort of ties everyone together. So whether it's now releasing news, but also back to the original, putting out videos. We haven't had basketball to make videos about. We haven't had Knicks basketball since March. So yeah. I'm hoping that can be kind of the main purpose we get back into it as the season gets rolling. But for now, it's heavy on the news because that's kind of what we're all living in.
Yeah. And I'm just happy because I get to continue to work with you in some capacity, which is all I really care about.
That's right.
What do you think where should we start? I feel like there are a few different places we could start today. You're the guest. I'm going to open it up to you.
All right. Well, I guess since it's the latest news, is everything breaking around Chris Paul, whether it's, Phoenix getting engaged in conversations, how that maybe impacts things at the Knicks. Ian Begley just came out with a report saying that some within MSG are wary of giving up too many assets in a deal. I know you reported that, there might be an offer on the table that Sam Presti is comfortable with, but that doesn't mean that the Knicks are ready to pull the trigger on that. So maybe that's kind of the best place to start. And you're the host, but I'm going to ask you because you're also our newsbreaker. I mean, where do you think things are, just kind of reading based on what you know, but also reading the reports coming out? And real quickly, I'll add, I heard Brian Windhurst, who came out with the
Yes.
ESPN report.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
He was on a Phoenix radio station today, and he said a lot more there, funny enough, than he said in the report. But he said that the Suns and Thunder were not happy that that came out. They didn't want it to come out. He said
Oh, interesting.
right. And he said Paul has been given permission to talk to the Suns.
Yeah.
And then he also said that he thinks it's greater than 50-50 shot a deal would get done, but it's not close. So it's like he hedges there at the end. But anyways, I'll add all that context and then get what you think.
So I feel like we have to go back to the beginning. So when the Paul stuff first came out, I think there was a healthy bit of skepticism as to whether the Knicks wanted him. Like there were reports that like, oh, the Knicks are thinking about trading for Chris Paul, and there were some people who were like, oh no, they're not. Like, we're past that now, right? It's like Ian came on my pod, last week and was like, yes, in a perfect world, they would like to have Chris Paul. I think we're all in agreement at this point. There were discussions between the teams. I think very, very, very. I don't know what the lowest level of NBA discussion is, but like very shooting the shit, kind of discussions. And it was what was conveyed to me was that Oklahoma City wanted too much. And I'm sure I reported some variation of that in the newsletter. And that offer was too high. And then the next thing I heard after that was what I reported about Paul preferring, if he had his druthers, to play in either New York or LA next season. And I believe God, I'm going to get it confused. Either Berman or Begley reported something along the lines of like, he would be okay with playing in New York or living in New York, right, next year. Mm-hmm. I think that was Berman. Anyway, so and Sam Presti had like something that he was comfortable with. In my interpretation of it, and I don't know this, I can't report this, but that he had like lessened his asking price, and that's where I left. That's the last I've heard of where things stood with the Knicks and Chris Paul, and now it sounds like the Thunder or rather the Suns are going to, because if this deal goes through, my understanding is that the Thunder would end up with the 10th pick in the draft, which is which is a pretty
right. That's one, because I saw another report saying basically the Thunder were almost operating as if they were going to find a way to get within the top 10, and that was someone I think hedging of, well, do they end up making a deal with the Knicks to get 8? Do they now Phoenix 10? But I think that's part of it for sure.
So I don't think look, who the hell knows how many machinations there could be, but like this is my impression. This is not me reporting this. This is my impression. My impression has always been 8 is not on the table in a Chris Paul trade and would not be on the table. Now, does that mean there couldn't be some crazy deal where it's a 3 or 4 team or whatever, where the Knicks give up 8 and they get back, like, I'm just throwing numbers out there, 12 or 13 or 14. I have no idea. But so if they could get 10, if the Thunder could get 10, and I think, I'm just checking directly from my source. The Suns would get 10. The Thunder. Sorry. Thunder would get 10.
Yep.
And I mean, that's pretty good. So I can't imagine anyone beating that. And then it comes down to, does Chris Paul want to play in Phoenix? How far is Phoenix from LA? It's like,
well, that was something I was going to actually ask you about. Is it comes down, because Windhurst was bringing it up too. That's why he's given permission to talk, because it's all about where he wants to go. I mean, it is sort of interesting because he's got 2 years left on his deal. He's not opting out of that second year with the amount of money he's going to make, right?
Not unless he gets re-signed to some.
So basically, where he goes, I guess I wanted to get on terms of like, in terms of making him happy. Do you see that as teams seeing it that when they get him, they then want him to sort of be a recruiter for them, and therefore he, the place he ends up needs to be a place he's happy with, or he won't do that? Do you see it just as like, well,
I don't even think it's that complicated. I think it's just like, if he doesn't want to go, it's not going to, like, I think he wields that amount of power. If he doesn't sign off on the deal, I don't think there's a deal. That's my impression.
Yeah. And I guess I'm even thinking, as we're saying this, does he have that a status there where he can even make, as a veteran player, where he can even make it's almost like, he can make no trade. But I guess, yeah, I get it. Like, they're not going to send him to Botswana, but I guess my thought is if he prefers,
Of course, Botswana.
that's
Only
always the
you.
one you have
Only
to pick. That's the one you have to pick. But if he prefers LA or New York, but then you send him somewhere that's not like his favorite place to go, I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's like, how much do you have to appease?
I think it's up to him. I think it's in his. I think the ball. My impression is that the ball is kind of in his court, and it's like, I would think that this happened something along the lines of like, hey, Chris, I'm pretending to be Sam Presti here. We have a deal that we really like with Phoenix. Would you be open to like talking to these guys? And he was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll talk to them. If those conversations go poorly, but if he's willing to talk to them, I got to think that's why, to me,
yeah,
it was the tenor of the report. I don't know. Did you get just a sense from the way Wendy reported that last night that this was more than just two teams bullshitting? This was real.
Yeah, that's what we were actually saying on Knicks Fan TV last night. It's like, especially when it comes from there, right? Like if a Woj, Windhurst, McMahon wasn't part of that. He's part of Westbrook one. But a Woj, Windhurst type of report comes out, they don't usually just put out the like, yeah, this is something that's kind of like on people's radar that could happen. It's usually like, there is serious smoke here, so we're going to put it out now because this could be something that becomes real. So that's how I took it.
The interesting thing to me is he has an Italian last name, and I feel like I'm going to screw it up. John Gambadoro. Gambadoro?
I'm letting you mess it up, so yeah, we'll go with that. But
you're
from
part
Arizona
Italian,
Sports.
you should get in on this too. People someone called. Oh my God, what did somebody call me recently?
It is John Gambadoro. I'll go with that.
Gambadoro. Let's go with Gambadoro. Wrote a couple hours ago that he reported that Oklahoma City doesn't want any multi-year contracts back if they make a trade, and they don't have. Also, they have no real interest in either guy, Rubio or Oubre. So I obviously reported in the newsletter today that it was I had you hear stuff, you hear stuff. Where I heard it from, is a credible source. Whether where the game of telephone goes from there, we'll see. But I feel like if I had heard the possibility of a 4-team deal, I'm surprised that's not out there more. And the two teams I mentioned, the Clippers and the Mavericks, make a little sense because you got Tim Hardaway Jr. there, $18 million expiring. I could see, again, I don't know what's going to go where, but or who knows, maybe Oklahoma City is trying to get in on one of those lower contract players that Dallas has, like Seth Curry signed to a nice number. That see, to me, that's a Sam Presti move, to try to get a guy locked up for several years, a fair number, who's going to help them. But who knows? I don't. This is just me guessing.
But so you're the big question. You asked this to Begley. I'll ask it to you. What's the percentage you put it on that he ends up with the Knicks?
Well, at this point,
yes.
I think that Suns thing is real. I really do. So that's my gut. That's my gut feeling. Knicks. Yeah, I think if it fell through. Let me put it this way. I think if it fell through, I think there's a better than 50% chance he ends up on the Knicks.
Okay. But as far as based on that Phoenix thing, it's all
based on, because I think, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think Phoenix wants him. And if Chris Paul is like, okay, I'm cool with going to Phoenix, I have to think those teams are going to figure out a way.
Yeah. Because they have up to $20 million, I think, in cap space. So they got some, room to even make, especially if they're trading some contracts back. And I know you just said about the multi-year contracts, but the point is, if they can make a deal work and even have a little cap space to add around that, that could be a desirable spot, because obviously you already have Booker there.
I don't think Knicks fans will be disappointed. I'm sure some Knicks fans will be disappointed. I'm going to write, I think, next week, the 10 versions of very quickly, 10 versions of a Knick off season, from most desirable, the thing that would get most hated on to the thing that would get most
Russell
loved.
Westbrook.
He's got to be number. Well, let's go there.
Yeah.
That has to. Is there I'm actually going to put it like this. Is there, other than them trading like an asset or assets for Russell Westbrook, is there anything that they could do this season that you think would uniformly just send people running off the ledge? I can't think of anything else.
Well, I think Russell Westbrook, that's a deal that all of the people who cover the NBA and all the people on Knicks Twitter would go crazy about. What's funny enough, I mean, even last night taking calls on Knicks Fan TV, it's like there are, we got to remember, and maybe this is a lesson we even learned, following the election. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't exist on social media every second commenting about the Knicks. And I think there's different opinions. I think there are still people out there who are big Russ fans. They still want to see a star come to the Garden, and they don't really care that much about the big contract. They would just be like, yeah, you finally brought a star. So I don't think it's literally like every Knicks fan is going to say that's a terrible deal, but I think it would become the type of deal that would be kind of quote LOL Knicks in some ways, because it's like, well, what are you doing? I mean, yeah, you could say, well, if you're for Chris Paul, why not Westbrook? Because Westbrook plays the same position, but I just don't think his game is as complementary to the young guys as Paul would be. He's also not as good a player. And then to me, the big thing is this: if right now, forget trading anything for him, if right now I said, would you sign Russell Westbrook for 3 years, $132 million?
That's like, I can't even.
I mean, to me, that's it. Just put it in that perspective. And that to me should end the conversation. 3 years, $132 million, because that's what you're signing up for.
I think I wrote today, and I had not heard anything that would lead me to believe that they're seriously looking into Russell Westbrook in the way, because I had heard some other stuff about the Clippers and like something that may be in the works there that I wasn't comfortable reporting because I'm not sure I buy it. But like, think about it. If you're the Rockets and you're trying to maximize James Harden's like this year, if you're trying to, let me rephrase it. If you're trying to win this year, if it's simple as that, right? Because if you're not trying to win this year, then you should just trade James Harden right now.
Well, and that was, by the way, not to interrupt, I mean, that's the other thing. What was it? Perkins, who I know no one wants to listen to anymore, but he said, I think it was today, that he hasn't been answering phone calls. Basically, he quote ghosted the Rockets for 2 weeks. Did you see that? So
Russell Westbrook, I didn't see that.
No, Harden.
I almost spit out my beer. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, this is about, we could be where it's like, yeah, assuming Harden is there, what do they do? But what if you're not making that assumption anymore?
Personally, again, it's easy for me to say because I don't own an NBA team. I don't run an NBA team. But to me, the Rockets will never have a better opportunity to trade James Harden than right now. And I feel like, what that means for Russ. Do they then pay a little bit to offload Russ? Do they just try to find someone willing to take on Russ? See, that's the more interesting question for me, is like, okay, just to put a cap on the thought I had before, if you're Houston and you're trying to win right now with Harden, then you're trading Russ for players that could help you win now, which the Knicks don't have. So it makes no sense. So I think when Kevin O'Connor was like, oh, the Knicks have however he phrased it, kicked the tires on Russell Westbrook. Yeah, I think Leon Rose, if Houston was like, yeah, we'll give you Russell Westbrook, just take him off our hands, you get to pay his salary. And like they traded him for like a future second round protected pick. Like, I wouldn't like that. You probably wouldn't like that. Knicks Twitter wouldn't like that. But objectively, as like a basketball observer and fan, if you're like, okay, you get Russell Westbrook, who made third team All NBA last season, for free in terms of assets, and all you have to do is pay his contract, like, that's a discussion at least, right?
I mean, again, if it wasn't $132 million, I would feel better.
I don't want them to do that. I'm just saying,
right.
If you're running an organization that has been as bad as the Knicks have been, and this is where we have
right. And then the other side you could say is this year is sort of a free year, right? They have cap space. They're not looking to spend it really on other things, other than, I know people could say, well, you could take on a contract with a sweetener and a draft pick. You can do other things. Yeah. But the point is, this is sort of a free year where you could argue, it's like you're getting the 2 years after that. But then to me, the question is, well, what other player could you get at that point in time? basically,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So that's why I'm just kind of like, you know, even with this year being a year where you have the cap space, you can kind of take them in and it doesn't necessarily get in the way of what you want to do. I just wish there wasn't that extra year in the.
Yeah, the third year kills you. It's not happening
But
because
I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's something you're not, it's not like you're trading for a guy who is like washed up and making that money. How some people almost talk about him. Like you said,
yeah,
he is not Chris Paul, but he's also not terrible. Like he's still a good basketball player.
he's not Nicholas Batum, making $25 million or whatever Nicholas Batum.
I think there's just so much like opinion about Russell Westbrook. It's like you can't just have an objective conversation about him, because I think people, even at the height of his game, people have this feeling about how you're able to win, if you're able to win at a certain level with him. But when you're the Knicks and you haven't won at all, it's like, I see what you're saying there. But yeah, that would be the one I think that would get most fans upset.
That would get hated on. But I feel pretty comfortable saying it's unless James Harden demands a trade tomorrow and they acquiesce him, and whatever comes of that. Other than that, because but again, just to finish the other point that I was about to make, which is that if I'm the Rockets, I would trade him now because they own their pick. They own their pick this year, next year. Sorry, in 2021, and there's a pick swap in 2022, and they own their pick in 2023.
Right.
I know there's protections on the 2022.
And then they got the 2024. I just pulled it up.
2024 is a swap that's only top four protected.
No, 2024 is protected, but it goes to OKC. 2025 is a swap. 2026 to OKC.
That's
right?
it.
Because they had to alternate. They had to alternate the swaps because you can't lose the.
What's their 2022 situation?
So 2022, it looks like in 2022, nothing. They have their own pick in 2022.
Oh, look who it is. Hey.
Zoe snuck in here.
Oh, wait, I forgot. People are going to be listening to this. They can't see it. We're on Zoom. Hey, Zoe. I'm leaving this in the pod. I really don't care. JB's beautiful, wonderful, amazing daughter, who is always so nice to my daughter, has just walked into our Zoom call.
Because I got my headphones on. But Zoe's here to say, do not trade for Russell Westbrook.
Do you want to trade for Russell Westbrook, Zoe?
I'm here to say it's computer time, Daddy.
Okay. All right. Well, you can go play over here. She can't hear you because I got my headphones on. This makes for great podcasting.
This is exceptional podcasting. I don't.
But
really care.
So somehow, let's see. Am I reading this right? The 2022. So
no, you're right. I forgot. You're right. There's no 20. The 2021 first round pick goes to Oklahoma City, but that's a swap, and Houston gets the least favorable of theirs. Oh, okay. So then maybe it's not the best year for them to tank right away, because they would end up with Miami's pick in all likelihood. So, all right, whatever. Try to win this year. But even all the more reason, that the Knicks are not going to be involved in Russell Westbrook sweepstakes, which is good. What other news is there? I feel like there's other stuff we're missing. Other stuff happened today for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean,
let's get the other big name.
The rest is into the draft. I was going to say we could get into the draft now.
Well, Ian, just so we say this, he predicts the Knicks will not be making a trade for Victor Oladipo this offseason, which I don't think is news. But it's.
And by the way, Mac, I'm being a promoter now. He's going to Knicks Film School Twitter account, and he's scrolling through hopefully to read what is the latest news, because I'm literally
there. Let's see.
Yeah, there you go. He's doing that. All right. Good.
I don't know if we're going to be able to we're getting the stuff up on the YouTube channel at some point. Shout out to Andrew Claudio for spearheading that effort. So that's the only other big name. Oh, the Knicks made a hire today. We should probably mention that.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Larry Greer.
Right. The brother of the assistant coach.
So get this now. Leon Rose in one offseason has hired now two sets of brothers. He hired the Zanin brothers as one of them is the assistant GM for pro scouting, and the other one's a scout. And then Andy Greer is Tibbs's assistant coach, and Larry Greer is also going to be an advanced scout.
Right.
We got him from the sign. I know.
I don't know what the hell that hire means, but there you go. They got another.
There you go. It's a hire.
Scout.
Oh wait, what? Before we get to the draft stuff, also Van Fleet. What'd you make of those comments?
No, I know. Yeah, he is pretty strong. Basically saying, "Look, I'm looking to get paid."
That was insane to me.
I wonder if he's been like sitting, everyone reads the clippings, and I wonder if he's sitting there checking Hoops Hype or whatever, and he's like seeing all this stuff of like, oh, Toronto will likely re-sign him, and everyone's putting him around that $20 million range. I wonder if he's sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute here, like, don't just assume I'm gonna just stay here and re-sign for what they want me to re-sign for. I wonder if that was kind of his little, statement towards that.
To me, it read, first of all, to me, it was a sign that he hasn't agreed to a deal yet, which is really interesting to me, because I feel like if you read the tea leaves, the big time NBA media people have basically said like free agency is going to be like the deals are done, right? It's like people have already agreed to stuff. So to me, that says it's not done, which some Knicks fans may be happy about because they may want him. What do you have a number? And I know we mentioned Van Vliet on a podcast that we did together for Pod Strickland a few weeks ago. Do you have a number in your mind for Van Vliet? Like, you don't want to go above?
I mean, I feel like doing something where you offer him, let's say you offered him up to like 23, 24 now, but then did declining salary. So meaning front load the contract, and then rather than doing like the annual 5%, increase, you decline it because they have the extra cash this year. I could see something like that.
I like that. I'm a big fan of the 2-year max idea that I brought up on my pod at some point. I see you got a Dodger sticker on the laptop there. That's very nice.
Yes, that was my Dodgers blogging laptop also.
Dodgers blogging. I love all the people who are listening to the pod. Like, Macri, do you realize that we can't see the Zoom? I'm telling you, I don't care. I'm having a conversation with my friend.
This tells you why we need to get this up on the YouTube.
Yeah, because
people are dying to see what my laptop sticker looks like.
People are dying to see it. So that's the Van Fleet, and then I think you're. Other than that, it's the draft stuff, right? So what? I know you're not huge into the draft stuff yet. So as someone who is not big into the draft stuff, did anything stand out to you from like the last couple days or today or anything?
I guess kind of, everyone's playing the game of tying reports together about which team likes who to see who could be available. And I guess to me, the big takeaway is it seems like if the Knicks just keep their picks, stay where they are at 8, we could really have a decision here where, I think when you're picking late in the lottery, there's usually, just think back in time, there's usually been maybe like one player, famously with Michael Porter Jr. that might fall, that everyone then debates.
Yeah.
But then for the most part, it's like, okay, this is kind of the best guy available around then, so you just take him. But like this year, it seems like there's several guys, and it's sort of the nature of how the board is, where it's not set in stone. There's not a lot of consensus, but it seems like there could be 3 or 4 guys available at 8 that some people would have taken if the Knicks picked 5th. And I think that's what's interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna give away my newsletter on Friday, which is I think it's gonna go. I tweeted today. It seems like there is a consensus building about who the top 7 are gonna be, which is like the big 3 guys up top, Ball and Wiseman and Edwards, and then Denny and Obi Toppin and Halliburton, and I believe the Patrick Williams stuff at this point. I think I flip-flopped on that in the last 24 to 48 hours. I wasn't sure if that was real, and I think it's real. And I think this is going to be a situation where, other than Patrick Williams, who I'm not sure what they would do if he fell to 8, if one of those other, look, now mine is sneaking in. Look at this. She's much more camera shy than yours, though.
She must have heard, yeah.
Yeah, she heard. Did you hear me talk about Zoe? Oh, because Zoe was on the camera. I think if one of those first 6 falls, the Knicks are taking them and they're running to the bank and cashing their check. I think if none of those 6 fall and it's Killian Hayes is there, I think then it's a matter of like, all right, let's take the phone calls, let's see what we're being offered, and then it's a very on the clock trade discussion.
Okay.
And if they get something good, get a good enough offer, I absolutely think they would trade down. And if they don't get a good enough offer, I would probably bet on Hayes being the guy at this point, but who knows? It wouldn't shock me if they went a few different other directions. But
Well, that would follow on lottery night. I put out the thing, take it to the bank. The Knicks will not pick at 8. They will trade the pick. Cause I thought at that time,
oh, that's right. You did put that out.
they're either going to use the pick to trade up. They're going to use it to trade for a player, a star, or they would trade back. I just didn't think they would sit there at 8 because 8 doesn't necessarily I don't know. It just didn't, I guess it depends how the players fall and who they have high on your draft board. But I will say since then, I feel a little more confident that this is when I was feeling more like Leon Rose wants to make a quote, move the needle type of deal. I feel a little more confident now that he's not necessarily just looking to do that.
I don't think he feels pressured to do it. I think he would love to do it.
Right.
I just don't, I think he realizes he can't.
Yeah, but that, I don't know though. I mean, I think, is that where we're feeling I'll call it optimistic as Knicks fans, because you always can if you're willing to overpay for something.
I think so. If we presuppose that he's not going to trade RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson, which maybe that's unfair to presuppose, but I am going to presuppose that.
Yep.
Then it becomes, what can you get with the 8th pick, right? And if we also presuppose that he's not going to trade away any future first round picks, which God help us all. Let's hope that doesn't happen. It's like, what can you get with the 8th pick? And like many moons ago, I can't remember what month of quarantine this was, I wrote a thing about like Zach LaVine and like, would they consider giving up 8 and something for LaVine? That was, I think, maybe right when Karnisovas took over, or maybe it was even before Karnisovas took over. I forget, but like, that's the level of player 100% I could have seen him trading the pick for. I don't see that player out there because I don't think they're going to give it up for Oladipo as an expiring contract and, a year.
Well, right. But that's what I'm saying. We're saying we don't think that will happen now. I think based on what we're reading in the tea leaves, but that's where, back in August, I wasn't so sure, like how aggressive would he be even for that type of a move, where now I feel better that he's not looking to make that type of a move, even if, again, because those type of a moves do, improve the team right now. You're going to get more out of an Oladipo right now than you are going to from the 8th pick. But we know that's not the type of trade that we want them to make. But I'm just saying that was a part when Leon Rose first came on, I wasn't sure like how he would view stuff like that.
I think we can be 1,000% sure at this point that he has his eye on the long game. But I think I've put this in so many different ways in the newsletter and the pod over the past like several weeks. There is a part of playing the long game is to get better in the immediate future, but there are ways you get better in the present, whatever, that don't benefit the long game. And then there are ways you get better in the present that do benefit the long game. And I think he only has interest in doing going down one of those two paths.
Well, that's why, really with Van Fleet, it is interesting because I was even thinking about this, funny enough, a little bit with the Mets. And it's just like, they have, this is how I'm going to always tie now the newsletter.
This is great.
But everyone's excited with Cohen and all the money he has. And everyone's like, well, how quickly are they going to try to compete? Well, to me, it's like, if you are trying to compete quickly, you can spend money without sacrificing your prospects or your assets. And that's a way of like improving in the near term without kind of selling the farm. In basketball, it's a little different because the salary cap is more restrictive. So if you spend that money on multi-year contracts, it also does impact you down the road. But if you can improve the team without giving up draft capital or young players, then, and you are in this unique position this year now with the Knicks where you have cap space and a lot of teams don't, it does kind of make you think, yeah, maybe that's why you should be aggressive, especially for a player that is 26, right? And Van Fleet, that you feel like could have value if you needed to move him down the road. So in some ways, to your point of, you think he sees the long game, a way to be better in the long game is to show improvement in the short term. Going off that point, to me, the best way to do that is to sign a player like Van Fleet, because you are doing that without sacrificing any of your long game pieces.
Yeah. Yes. And I genuinely, but like, I know people have their concerns about Van Fleet, and I totally get it. I don't know how high the number that has to be for that guy, for that contract to age, Tim Hardaway Jr. level bad.
Right.
I'm not and I think they could get him in a number below if he wants to come. He may not want to come. Toronto may pony up whatever it takes to get him, but this is why I want to get your. So I put what I deemed a crazy trade in the newsletter today with the Knicks in a 3-way deal with Golden State and New Orleans, where the Knicks would be taking on Andrew Wiggins and the remainder of his contract, and they would be getting some good stuff. I think they would be 100% willing to do that deal. Like I read, I think it was Ian. Yeah, I think it was Ian earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, noted that no, it wasn't Ian. It was Zach Lowe. It was Zach Lowe who wrote in his giant off-season preview column, which was really good, about how there's this thinking that the Knicks are going to take on bad money, but it has to be the right type of bad money. It has to be the right, bad money for a youngish player who still has maybe not upside, but you could talk yourself into it. I don't know. I keep looking at that guy. Spent a lot of time under Tibbs. Tibbs apparently kept in touch after he left Minnesota.
Right.
If the Holiday, and now it seems like Holiday, and this is why this all ties together. It seems like the Holiday Atlanta thing may be happening. So that means Holiday Golden State won't happen. But if the Warriors, if you're the Warriors and you have this second pick and you have a chance to get Drew Holiday, I'm hoping they do it. And I'm hoping that the Pelicans are no way in hell are we taking on Andrew Wiggins. Cause my goodness, would I love to get the Knicks involved in that and pick up some stuff.
Yeah, no, I feel like the Wiggins, you've been on the Wiggins train.
Because he's not a useless player.
Yeah,
he's
I was
an
just looking up to
player.
remind myself of his contract. It's still, well, what's funny is though, so we were just talking Westbrook. Well, it's obviously Wiggins is not Westbrook, but when you're 24 and you have 3 years more like 90 million versus 3 years 132 million.
Who would you bet on being the less detrimental player over the course of the next 3 years?
That's what I'm saying. When you look at it, you have to factor in that $42 million difference in the age that they are at. So you can't just go on reputation. We've talked about this before with risk. It's so ironic with Steve Mills, the last run, where you could say the Knicks were risk adverse. They basically were we're just not going to do anything. But yet what's ironic is they made maybe the riskiest move you could possibly. The one move they did make was a very risky one with Porzingis.
Yes, it's the riskiest move any organization could make.
So it's sort of strange. They made one extremely risky move, but then everything else they did was risk averse. Well, teams have to take chances, and something like a Wiggins deal, it's this is where you have to trust all these scouts that they're hiring, and with Tibbs, the basketball people, to be able to assess and say, we think we can't, we can put Wiggins in the right position to be this. And if you're able to do that, then you change the story. We've seen it happen a million times where people make up their mind about a player, especially based on their contract.
Yes.
And as that contract starts to tick away, where it's only 3 years or 2 years, and the player gets better, everyone's like, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe this. So I think that's where you're kind of going with Wiggins.
I'd be curious to see what they could pick up. That's all. I'd be really curious to see what. I'm not advocating trading for Wiggins as a neutral asset or something. I'm saying.
Yeah, right. But
if you're
getting something and you're getting a player that, like we just said, is still. It's possible that he could be a positive contributor for you at that age, especially.
Yeah. And if that guy becomes an asset that after in a year, other teams around the league look at and you know what? Okay. It's now a 2-year 60, at that point it'd be $64 million deal. 2 years, 64 million, but it's 2 years. It's only 2 years.
Right.
And he just came off a good season. Is he $10 million player? Is he a $15 million player? Whatever. He's a helpful player. So we're going to it becomes, I don't know. I think, and it seems like to me, that is the type of move that they would like to make. And I just don't know if that deal's going to, I just don't know if that deal's going to be there. You know, we'll
materialize for him. Yep.
Gosh, I think did we go through everything? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we covered the main points. I mean, can you believe we're a week away, right? Yeah, today's the 11th, so we're a week away from the draft after all this.
We're recording this, it's Wednesday night. Do you think we're going to get any news, like confirmation of a thing happening between now and Monday?
Between now and well, yeah, because officially the trades are saying are going to open up the 16th.
The moratorium is like, I'm guessing it's going to be noon.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to see a ton. Like, think about it. This has all been, like you allude to, there's a feeling that behind the scenes, there's already been a lot of talks in place, and they've been sort of waiting for like the gun to go off, like make things happen. This year, we don't have, like in prior years, one league changing superstar where you're all waiting. Because remember, what slows a lot of moves down in the past was you'd have like LeBron, you'd have Durant, and then everyone's sort of talking, but it's like based on what they do, it changes a lot. We don't have that this year. So to me, I think we're going to see a ton of chatter being worked out, agents jockeying for position using, reporters. So I think we'll have a lot going on. Whether whether you're saying like we'll find out on Sunday, like Chris Paul is going to the Suns, I think that might be more. I actually think it might be more, into next week. I think everyone's going to try to get like sort of their final pole position here, and then we'll learn what's going on.
I've thought for a while that Chris Paul was going to be the first domino, and I no longer think that. I think the Chris Paul thing exists almost in his own separate universe, because I kind of think. Yeah, I kind of think it's the Suns or the Knicks at this point. We haven't heard anything about the Lakers. I think the Clippers are looking at other avenues. We've heard really, other than like Giannis is amenable to bringing on Chris Paul as like that. Like we haven't really heard anything, but it doesn't seem like that's where the Bucks want to go. Doesn't seem like that's where the Sixers want to go. I think it's like, so I think that exists in its own universe. I think Drew Holiday is a big domino. I think the Drew Holiday domino is significant. And then when that falls, other stuff will start to happen, because I do think maybe some teams are waiting on that. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be crazy. I'm excited about it. I wonder if we're sitting here 2 weeks from now, what we're gonna say. Did they do a good job? Did they win?
Well, it's funny. I keep kind of thinking to myself, the way it will go, that I think it's funny. Like we live in this world now where you're checking for update. It's more like an addictive pattern, right? Like you're searching for rumors, you're checking for updates, but in reality, like you don't want, like there's a lot of stuff you don't want to happen. It's just this time of year, you get in this craze of like, anytime there's trade deadline, free agency, it's like you're excited for news, even if that news, when it comes, you don't necessarily want it. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 weeks from now we're sitting here being like, the Knicks made 3 picks in the draft. We're not upset about any of those picks. And, they made their decision, Bullock, they have coming back, and they're still in position that they can make a move, because maybe, like you said, the Chris Paul trade hasn't happened yet. And we're sort of like, we're sort of on par. I mean, could you see just that being there? Or do you think within these next 2 weeks, there will be something, maybe even something out of left field that happens with the Knicks?
I don't think there's going to be something big out of left field. I think the two things that will define their offseason are is there a big enough package for them to trade down, and what do they end up with if they trade down, when they trade down, and then do they get in as a salary dump team? Do they figure out a way to really capitalize on somebody's distaste for taking on money? And I just saw, speaking of the New York Knicks, they just sent out a tweet, 1 week to go until the NBA draft. Let's both do this, JB. We're going to do this live on the pod. So the Knicks just sent out a tweet. It says, 1 week until the NBA draft. Lots of talent to go around. Screenshot and let us know who you got. And there's this there's a quickly changing cycle of draft prospects.
Okay, so we're gonna do it. See who we get.
We're gonna do it simultaneously. I'm gonna okay on 3. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Okay, I got Isaac Okoro, who's the guy that was just saying on Twitter before that I don't think there's a good chance he ends up with the Knicks. That's who I got. Who'd you get?
Kyra Lewis Jr.
I think that's.
You think that could be the one?
I think it's neck and neck between him and Hayes. If he gave me, I have a feeling I would get better odds on Kyra Lewis, and I would take those odds. I would bet Kyra Lewis is the next.
Well, I mean, he had dinner with the front office, and
he did in Miami, right?
Yeah. So that was the interesting updated off season.
Last thing, I have a quick funny story before I let you go. I'm going to plug another podcast on this podcast. Me and Adam Taylor are doing our general NBA pod. We've moved over to TalkBasket, talkbasket.net. I think I should probably know that. And we're podcasting for them now, but they're like a big deal in Europe. So I was able to get credentialed for these draft interviews.
Yeah, right. I saw you tweeting that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in there.
But you told me you were going to get the credential to them, but I sort of forgot about that. So when I saw you tweeting it out, I was like, wait, where's Mackie getting all this from?
I snuck in. I stole Ian Begley's Zoom password. No.
Yeah, but go on.
So I'm doing these things, and awesome, by the way, very, very cool. And I have to try to figure out how to simultaneously teach classes over the next 2 days and watch like LaMelo Ball talk about the workouts that he hasn't done. Anyway, so at one point I shouted that Dolores was in the living room, and I'm like, this is so fucking cool. This silly thing that I'm sure all these other people are taking for granted. This is so cool. A few minutes later, I noticed another reporter privately chatted me like, your mic is not on mute. But I'm not sure if it was that, or if maybe he just like heard me typing or something, because I'm pretty sure I said that in a room where I was like, I knew I was on mute. But there's a chance that like every NBA reporter heard me talk about how cool it was.
But the thing that's weird about that, because you had noticed my Dodger sticker, so different than the Knicks world, by writing about the Dodgers and Dodgers Way, they were extremely quick to give credentials. If you write for a blog like that, and this year it kind of worked out because everyone was on Zoom, so I had the same access as some guy from like the LA Times. Well, the way they did it is like once you got into the Zoom, everyone was automatically on mute until the head of PRs gave you a chance to ask the question.
Well, so if you're there from the start of the meeting, you were automatically muted, but the interviews were overlapping by like 2 minutes. So I came into that one late, so I don't know if I was automatically muted. I see. There's a chance.
Well, if the other person heard you, I guess then you how would they hear you if you weren't automatically muted?
I'm hoping that maybe they thought it was me and it was somebody else.
Okay, I see.
That's what I'm hoping. Or maybe I just said something else and they and it wasn't and they didn't hear that thing.
At least you didn't do anything like ridiculous. Like, to me, it's like not being on mute. It's like all these stories you hear and people with their video on, they didn't realize it was on and they're doing stuff.
Well, there was the Pornhub thing on CNN over during like when he was doing the map, right? Did you see that?
Well, there was one that I saw that it was like an ad for them that they made it up that it looked like someone was at work and they thought their video was off. But then when you said CNN, I thought you were talking about, was it Jeffrey Toobin? He's like a legal analyst for them, and he was in a thing for the New Yorker, and he literally exposed himself before he turned off realized his video was on, and he got into trouble. So there's been, and then of course there's like all these funny things coming out, like blog posts, like things to avoid when you're in a Zoom meeting, and then you would like opening it thinking it's serious, and then it'd be like, number 1, don't pull out your dick. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess that is a good. And by the way, Zoe has left the room as I use this.
Oh, this is a fantastic way to end this podcast. Okay. JB, I have to ask you because I ask every guest. Can you tell the folks at home where they can find you?
Yeah, well, they can find me where they find you now, right? So
Yeah, I
just
guess
go to
so.
the newsletter, Knicks Film School, and I guess we'll leave as I brought up the Dodgers, we'll leave the tease about the Mets if there's a new place to find me there, and
We're
we'll
starting
see.
a New York sports newsletter empire. This is fantastic. Oh,
Yes,
goodness.
but the thing I'll tell you too, at the end, that's sort of funny with the election stuff going on. It has messed up my notifications completely because I suddenly was following, in all these different states, like, the data kind of nerds or the reporters that I, realized were the right ones to trust. So like in Nevada or
Okay.
Pennsylvania. So it's been sort of funny because I'm used to, especially now as we're getting close to draft, like some of them I didn't like clear out yet. So I'm still like getting these
Okay.
notifications thinking like, oh, something with the Knicks happened. And then it's like, no, Maricopa County in Arizona is still counting their votes. And here's an update. So that's been the other world I've been living in.
Twitter did something, and I'm not sure if this was because my phone updated. Twitter did something it never did before tonight, which it was like it basically asked me, "Are you sure you want all these notifications on? You have it." I don't know what the exact wording was, but it was like you have a lot of notifications.
You're like, you got a problem.
You seek help, please. You know who kills me? He does great reporting, but oh my god, I don't want to get his name wrong. Adam Zagoria.
Oh yeah, because he gets a lot of the college stuff.
So like Zagoria sends out 100 tweets a day, and like 2 of them will be like NBA relevant stuff that I'll care about. So I have him on notifications. But it's like here, the last one: class of 2021 point guard Jalen Mills signed his NLI with Rutgers. Like I don't care about this, but
no, I know. But he's one that, especially if it's a local kid, he's gonna get.
He gets a lot of break. That dude like owns college basketball reporting.
No, I know. It is funny when you actually like look back at like who is breaking information about the Knicks. No one talks about him, but I would say he gets most of the like who they might have interviewed, who they had workouts when workouts were normal. Yeah, absolutely.
And Keith Smith, I recently put on notifications, and he's active. I love Keith Smith.
He's good. But you're right, he is very active. Yeah, but he's good because he's got the cap stuff down really well.
He's got all of it.
Yeah. So he's good.
I'm actually supposed to be interviewing him for Talk Basket. There you go.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah, follow everybody out there. If you like this podcast, subscribe to the Pick and Pod podcast. That's the one I do with Adam, and that's fun. Anyway, all right, JB, you have daughters to go play with. I have a daughter to go. I don't know what the hell she's doing right now. It's 5:09, so it's
it's because it's dark out. I'm looking at. I'm like, oh man, we've been talking, all night. It's like, well, it's 5 o'clock.
Wait, can I really quick 2-minute story? Very quick. Tell me if this has happened to you. The errand that I told you we had to run was to go to Target to get shoes because my daughter, we got her new shoes. She refuses to wear them because they're not comfortable. So we're like, okay, we're going to go to Target. We're going to try on shoes until you find one. We were in the shoe aisle on the floor for a half an hour. We must have tried on 20 pairs of shoes. Every time she got one on, crying, flailing, get them off of me, this, that, and the other thing. So finally she found a pair of shoes that she liked. They were a size too big. I'm like, we're getting them. We're getting the shoes. We go to the line, and Dolores is like, fine, buy them. I'm just going to bring them back. They're too big. I'm like, but what are we doing here? She's like, no, I'll just order them online. I'm like, well, if you were going to order them online, why couldn't we do that? And then she's like, because it would take a few days. It was one of those experiences where it's like, you could tell someone that doesn't have kids about it, and they would just look at you like you had 10 heads. They wouldn't get it.
Yeah, right.
It was. I know you've probably been there and done.
Yeah, we bought shoes recently, and we went through that. So I definitely, and I love it too, where it's like we'll get the parameters before we go in. Like, all right, she wanted this is my oldest daughter. She wanted Nikes, but she didn't want tie shoes, even though now she can tie her shoes. So she wanted like slip-on Nikes. We go in, and the problem is the order, right? So we went into DSW. I was planning on, if I couldn't find anything there, I was going to go to like a Kids Foot Locker. I had a couple other places in mind. The problem was we found what she wanted too quick. So because it was like we walked into DSW and boom, right there. And it was like, no. She needed, like I should have gone where I knew they didn't have this shoe because then if I went there and said, let's go to one other store, she would have been excited. So it's like, that's the other thing that I've learned. It's like the order. You can't come to a solution too quick because they're never going to just say, oh yeah, the first thing, of course. So yeah, we actually just went through that recently. And it's
well, that makes me happy. Young men out there, if you're listening to this, use protection.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the greatest birth control. Have them babysit for a weekend.
Use protection. Get a vasectomy, which I'm going to be getting shortly.
Yeah, you got your 2 girls, so you're set.
2 is good. I'm in the club with you. That's it. I don't want to be in any other clubs. This is the only club. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. You are great. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with you in another episode very shortly.